beforehand, I thought I was just going to be impressed. I thought it was going to be, yep, it's better than before. AMD's behind again, whatever. But that's not my conclusion. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today's episode is brought to you by JLC PCB. New customers get $70 off, existing $33 off their PCBs. Then also Micro Center, that is having a winter savings event right now and opening a new location, I believe. Wasn't it in, let me check here, Austin, Texas. Check out those links below to support the channel. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's this is the first new full episode we're doing of the year. Obviously, we've already done a die shrink that I actually think was one of the best ones we'd done, looking at the decline of the console market last year. We knew that we wouldn't talk about consoles much during the CES news episode. And so it's like, oh yeah, that was actually a huge story we almost didn't talk about. And it's like just a bonus Broken Silicon talking about that. So join the Patreon to see that. But besides that, this is the first full episode of the year, and I have to say, quite a lot to talk about, at least so far.
Yeah, and quite a consumer electronics show, as you said. Emphasis on consumer.
Yes, yeah. An interesting consumer electronics show where we don't talk about consumer products, unless you're Intel. Oddly enough, it was a very weird CES. Obviously, half of our stories will be connected to it, so I don't want to get ahead of ourselves there. But let's see. All right, we do have one correction here, and you won't be able to guess who it's from. Carmen Cry, who writes in and says, correction to David's reading of the COVID era of the memory cycle. Of course, David does tech stuff, was on the Christmas episode as usual. He says, memory is always cyclical. That's nothing new. What was new during COVID was that Samsung went crazy. They saw an opening to destroy the big three to become the DRAM superpower, with SK Hynix and Micron being much smaller. And what was their method? The use of Samsung's size and revenue from other segments to pay for massive CapEx. SK Hynix and Micron then increased their CapEx plans in response. And since Samsung could not build fast enough anyways, the plan failed. But the significant glut of CapEx during the last upcycle was not because the big three were dumb or crazy. It happened because Samsung wanted to start an arms race. And by the way, the CapEx glut is still effective. Is not what we built. Is not that we built a lot of capacity during COVID. We did not. That build out is only starting to increase supply volume actually now. 2020 onward, 6 to 8 years equals 2026 to 2028, which is when we get the huge new DRAM fabs online. I say
perfect timing.
Yeah, but in general, I just bring it up again because I said this in a response to a comment on YouTube, but I've seen some people say, well, how is this different than 2021, the RAM shortage versus the GPU and really most things shortage during COVID? Well, it's not really one thing. There's tons of different things, but I would say one thing I want to highlight that I did in this comment that I don't think a lot of people realize is a major difference between now and then is that these companies, even if a lot of it will still go to AI, are still building more capacity. And even if half of it, most of it goes to AI, some of it will go to consumers. So they're actually trying to make the situation better. When the pandemic started, they turned off fabs right when everyone would need more supply because, in another example,
there was a disease. I mean, it was, and they improperly gauged demand, I guess. But
no, they entirely. They said, we don't need to make cars, even though now people can't fly.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah. And another example of how humans cannot predict the future of markets, and you should not trust most people that tell you they can. If they can, they're probably already rich. If they're not, well, I mean, look, the smartest people on earth said there's a pandemic. People can't fly. So what should we do? Stop producing cars and stop producing laptops. High fives all around, guys. Good job. That's very different from now where, no, they're trying to build more, actually. It's a lot of it isn't going to consumers, but they're trying to build more, which much more easily should put a cap on how long a shortage can last. even if it's more abrupt this time because of how insane OpenAI was.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and there's sure enough demand for them to build out that supply with the AI companies. So,
yeah. All right. Anyways, speaking of AI, let's go to a story from a company that probably says AI more than any other, Nvidia. They announced DLSS 4.5, and we even have some early testing in. So first I'll quote Nvidia's press release, and then I will get to the write-up. All right, Nvidia, they said, at CES 2026, we're raising the bar with Nvidia DLSS 4.5, introducing a second-generation transformer model for DLSS super resolution that delivers state-of-the-art image quality for all GeForce RTX GPUs in over 400 games and apps. Nvidia DLSS 4.5 also introduces dynamic, that's an important word here, multi-frame generation in a new 6 times, multi-frame generation mode. When combined, DLSS 4.5 can generate up to 5 additional generated frames per traditionally rendered frame, dynamically boosting performance up to the refresh rate of your display, building on 8 years of research, including 6 years refining convolutional neural networks, or CNNs. We are introducing the first major upgrade of our transformer architecture with DLSS 4.5 super resolution. God, they repeat themselves a lot. The second generation is our most sophisticated yet. It has a deeper understanding in every scene and more intelligently uses game engine pixel sampling and motion data to deliver images that have better lighting, finer images, and improved motion clarity. So, yep, new year, new DLSS variant. First, let's start off with the good things. First, and most obviously, yes, in many scenarios, the image quality has just gotten another leap with DLSS. Specifically, I would highlight that Ancient Gameplays basically found that DLSS 4.5 massively improved shimmering issues and ghosting. Like you showed like ultra performance mode and performance modes with 4.0. You see the usual shimmering. 4.5, it kind of went away. And that is impressive if you don't look at the frame rates. Second, finally, DLSS will be getting dynamic insertion of extra frames when they update to allow for 6 times frame gen. This was something that I didn't bother to find where I said it, but if you remember, Dan, years ago, and then for years afterwards, I've been saying this is the holy grail of upscaling tech. If what we can do is you turn it on, this is only halfway there technically. The other half would be if they could dynamically shift between quality and ultra performance mode on the fly. But at least I guess you can almost do that with dynamic resolution with it though. So maybe that's almost there. Like, I believe that frame generation is mostly a waste of time, but especially when you have to select it and then downgrade your real frames. Like, I tried it in Battlefield 6, and what happened? Well, I went from sometimes dropping to like 100 frames and mostly being at 144 hertz to now permanently being forced to render at like 60 or like whatever half the frame rate was, like whatever I capped my frame rate at. And it overall felt way worse. But if frame generation could just be you have a 360 hertz display, and from what I'm reading, that's what you're going to want to at least have for this to make sense.
Especially with 6X, what's the point at lower than 360 hertz, honestly?
Yeah. But like, let's say you have a game that is running at its base frame rate, typically around 160 frames per second, but sometimes it jumps up to 200. Yes, what this can do is just fill in the dropped frames so it looks smoother. That would be the real use of frame generation, in my opinion, not forcing yourself to get half real frames, half fake frames, just as needed, smooth it out. So I think that's actually the biggest announcement, especially when we get to the rest of this write-up. So besides the good news, though, what's the bad news? Well, actually, there seems to be a major problem here with DLSS 4.5 lowering performance substantially. Specifically, Hardware Unboxed found that while the 5090 only lost a few percent in performance going from DLSS 4.5 to 4, and that is what Nvidia claimed, even the 5070 lost nearly double-digit performance in some games, with some giving basically no boost in performance at all and the quality setting. For much of the 50 series, and then Ampere and Turing cards often performed worse than native at frame rates. So you go from native resolution to DLSS quality 4.5, and now you lose maybe 10-20% performance. Furthermore, many people are noting how confusing DLSS is getting, with even some devs I spoke to behind the scenes today saying it's now a complete mess, regarding which DLSS they should use. Hardware Unboxed also pointed this out. There's like all these different ones to choose from, and they're like, if your game prioritizes this, you should use this, but probably make the default 4.0, not 4.5, because most people don't have Blackwell yet. It's very confusing, and it's not as simple as just selecting a toggle and knowing an older card will perform worse. And it's not even necessarily possible in some future games. People are concerned, at least. Like if it ships with DLSS 4.5, you would then, if you have an Ampere GPU, have to go into the Nvidia app and change it manually. And I looked, it's like it's sequenced by letters. So there's like DLSS and it's like there's a toggle, Dan. It's like version A, B, C,
M or something now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like, well, I don't know which any of these stand for unless I look it up. And that can be buggy. It can fail to work well. And so like asking future Ampere owners, for example, to have to do this per game, that could be a complete mess. And so what's my take overall? Well, mine, look, when I sat down to look at DLSS 4.5 today, which I will say Carbon Cry was sick, so I had to do the notes completely on my own. And so I really had to read every review. Beforehand, I thought I was just going to be impressed. I thought it was going to be, and I told this to actually one of my contacts, yep, it's better than before. AMD's behind again, whatever. But that's not my conclusion. What seems to be going on here is a model that is so intensive that perhaps NVIDIA should relabel their modes. I mean, if quality can lose you frame rates, this should be called ultra quality mode. And like ultra performance should just be called performance to convey the resulting performance hits. That is, of course, assuming that like an ultra performance mode beats performance and image quality, or but performs a similar frame rate. But we don't even know if that's true because it's kind of all over the place. And actually, Ancient Gameplays found clear examples where 4.5 in some games, in some spots, looked worse than 4.0. And if it isn't that much better consistently, one might ask, is this even a step forward? Long term, maybe. I mean, once, for example, I would say the RTX 7060 Ti performs like a 5090 and thus gets like a 2% performance hit for using 4.5, or by then I assume 5 or 6.0, then yes, all of these changes will have been worth it. But in the short term, most NVIDIA cards, even half of the current generation, gets a sizable performance hit, and sometimes the image quality isn't quite as good, even with the performance hit, as Ancient Gameplays showed. So combining that with how horribly confused developers are, I don't know. I'm going to have to see a lot more testing. And by the way, the next guest will be Tim at Hardware Unboxed, so he'll break it all down for me then. But at least my initial impression is some people hyping this up, this doesn't seem like a slam dunk until they add all the other features that are coming later. Would you agree, Dan?
I mean, yeah, this does. It does in some ways feel to me like the NVIDIA needs to start considering like what they do and don't update. Like, does this, in a lot of ways, well, I guess it can't just be an update to 4.0 because of the amount of damage, performance that it does to so many of their cards. So it's really hard to know exactly what to do here. But I do think DLSS, and we also talked about this a little bit with like FSR, even like it's getting a bit cumbersome with all these different versions and presets of their upscaling text. And I think part of the issue is like it's also a little bit cumbersome, like given that these tend to all be like a toggle in a menu. So it's like, how many settings are you going to change with a single toggle without it being abundantly clear, or two toggles without it being like clear what all is being changed by adjusting that toggle? Because like I don't know. I mean, a comparable one would be like resolution with a ton of options, with like the number of options, but it's pretty evident what you're doing when you're changing the resolution on in a game.
Yeah, there's resolution scaling, and then there's upscaling tech. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, here it's like, well, so there's what, 2 or 3 versions of DLSS in this game that I can implement, and there's what, ultra performance to quality or ultra quality on those 2 or 3 versions. And it's going to be a mishmash of different performance and visual quality levels that at a certain point I think just becomes really confusing, especially like when there's such a huge difference in performance gains and or losses depending on the mode and card you're using. Like it's very, very cumbersome, and like at a certain point, like they need their own little what's it called, a decoder ring to figure out all of everything that like what version of DLSS will do to your given card. Like it's getting a bit too complicated, and I imagine a lot of people will see this and they're like, wait, so DLSS 4.0 is, I have a 2080 Ti or 3090 or 3080 or something. So DLSS 4.0 is better than 4.5 because like I get way better performance. And honestly, in motion, yeah, can't really tell any difference. So I'm just going to switch it back to 4.0 or something.
I mean, it makes you think what they should have announced with this is a partnership with developers to have a graphics menu that's just, and I actually, from what I've heard, NVIDIA wants them to do this. They want a separate NVIDIA graphics menu. I don't think that's really necessary. What games should have is just a DLSS menu, and you click it, and then you choose. Do you want DLSS ultra performance through quality mode, or I guess through DLAA, which is really just using DLSS as anti-aliasing? Do you want to do that? Okay. And then below that, do you want to turn on frame generation? Okay. And then below that,
yeah,
do you want to turn on CNN? You know, like, because really it feels like this is dragging down presumably other improvements they've made to the quality of DLSS 4.5 for most graphics cards. And CNN should probably just be its own toggle.
Yeah.
Again, you do that, you solve the problem, or whatever's causing the performance drops, which presumably that's the main thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I guess I don't know how the best way to effectively do that in a menu, but even the versions of DLSS that you have in a given game, I feel like needs some type of indicator of what it's going to do. I guess I don't know if there's a best way to do that because, like, well, I don't think there's necessarily a way in the menu to read like, oh, the 2080 Ti will get worse performance than native, but it will look slightly better than quality. But like, I don't know if there could be some dynamic system if they're going to implement so many different settings and versions of DLSS in a single game. It does start to feel necessary to do that at a certain point because it is just confusing now.
Yeah. And another thing, I believe Steve at Hardware Unboxed touched on this in a video I watched with him and analyzing it. Like, it seems like this requires even more CPU overhead to run all this stuff. And NVIDIA's running into an issue here where DLSS is becoming so essential to their story of why you buy their cards, and it's becoming so cumbersome that there are some, it's like the 5090 is a good example. Okay, so the 5090 supposedly only gets to 3% performance hit going from 4.0 to 4.5. That sounds good on paper, but is that a 3% performance hit because the CPU overhead is really bad, and in some games it'll be a 20%? Because I'm already running into effectively frame rate caps in Battlefield 6 with my 4090, and the bigger the card is from NVIDIA, the more there is that CPU overhead issue. But okay, but then if I go to a smaller card, now I run into they're not strong enough to run the most powerful DLSS. Like it's again, it's like more is more if you handle it well. But I have some real concerns here about, again, what could happen with RDNA 5 and the RTX 60 series. You know, actually, I think the second most views this channel has gotten on a piece of content, it's over 700,000 now, is a short that highlights our concerns about DLSS 5.0 basically with RTX 60 series, where you already have situations in like Battlefield 6 where an RX 9070 XT can beat a 5080, a card that costs twice as much. What's going to happen when their cards get to 30,000 CUDA cores, 50,000 CUDA cores? And as if AMD can keep the CPU, well, really they have a hardware scheduler in their cards, and that's why they don't have this issue for the most part. If they can keep that advantage over NVIDIA, well, NVIDIA makes their issue worse. Are we going to get to a situation where you're like, you need to be in 8K to even notice NVIDIA has a flagship card compared to AMD? Like, is AMD going to win by default? And I just wonder if they're making the situation worse.
Or hopefully the hope is the CPU overhead issue will go away over time as we go beyond 8 cores as the main gaming CPU. So,
right, like if we get to 7
I don't know
gigahertz,
if that's just like
32 cores with double stacked Vcache in 5 years, maybe it won't matter. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if they just put everything on red and happen to win, but
right, and then once again, Jensen looks like a genius because he made the right bets, and when it became an issue, they already moved on to the next bottleneck.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, and it's weird though. The last thing I really have to say about this is just I don't know. I'm seeing. I guess I actually haven't really looked at people's responses to 4.5, but Brian Heemskirk at least pointed out to me that people are like attacking, like Nvidia people are like hating on the AMD r/Radeon Reddit right now, and it's like, if you guys check which card you have before you do that, do you know that you might get a 20% performance hit? Again, like I sat down expecting to be impressed by this, but I did not have on my bingo card massive performance hits for 95% of Nvidia owners. I think some of you might want to try it before you brag. And if you don't notice any issues, well, I mean, get your eyes checked because you're lowering your performance, it looks like, in some of these games. I don't know, though. Maybe the final version will come out and it won't be as big of a deal as it seems like right now. But at least most reporting now is that it seems to be in some pretty big issues.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, we can talk about like the increase in image quality all we want. Like, I'm not going to say it's bad that there's a increase in image quality versus their old models, but it only matters that much if it's especially in the situation they're in now, where it is just straight up better than native resolution, or like they're delivering roughly equal performance, and they're really not. So it's I don't know. I think it's a very mixed bag, and I think a lot more needs to be seen about in reviews about like what DLSS 4.5 actually gives you, because it seems like it could end up being a bit of a. I guess it's another option at is the best case scenario.
It seems a lot less like DLSS 1 to 2, which is probably the clearest cut example of.
Oh yeah, where it went from an awful feature to, well, not I shouldn't say awful, not good,
no, it was
great
awful.
theater.
It was awful.
Okay, an awful feature into actually pretty impressive. Like there's still issues, but wow, you got rid of the weird artifacting with DLSS 1.0.
Well, and going from 2 to 3, where it was like you're kind of stupid if you don't turn this on. It just looks better than native. And then 3 to 4, kind of just a better version of that with frame gem being a mixed bag. But now it's like, whoa, this is very not so clear cut. This seems like it's an upgrade. Most like the fact that there's even a debate tells you what this is.
It's weird. It's like it's not lateral, but it's like barely a promotion. I don't know how else to put it.
Jensen Wang, Nvidia isn't a bubble, writes, and it says, why did my barely profitable charity to gamers division choose such terrible names for DLSS model naming? I don't know. It's weird because I feel like Nvidia's naming schemes have been so on point over the past 10 years, ever since Pascal, really, that I'm not really sure how this got past marketing of like, wait, what? Like the meme of like Spider-Man pointing, like not knowing what anything is. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I
think
AMD
says hold my beer. We're gonna say Redstone now instead of FSR 4. So we're not saying they're worse than AMD. I'm just,
Yeah, it does just. I think it's just part of like the what's the term? I don't know if illusion of choice is the right term for it, but like this concept when you have so much choice, like you actually end up getting bogged down in it. There's no good way for them to really, for like the end user to like select the right thing, because it's just becoming a menu in and of itself. And I don't know how Nvidia it can properly like label, name all of these without just getting bogged down. I mean, my problem, I do think if you're going to have DLSS be this big cumbersome thing, it needs to be its own menu, or you need to pare it down to like 5 options per game or something.
Or again, find a way to make a single choice be more intuitive, like just like I said. And what if it comes out that on average, actually, DLSS 4.5 quality mode is like a almost as good on 50 series, 5 to 10% worse 40, 10%, 15% worse on 30 and 20 series, then you should just call that ultra quality if it looks better than the previous quality mode. That would be ideal, so that you can just make it more clear that now there's ultra quality Now there's ultra performance mode, and we kind of moved them around, and we're actually able to render from a lower resolution by default now because of how well it works, and it still looks better. That would be more ideal, and then just people with older cards would know it would run worse. But if they don't do that, I don't know. I think there's gonna be a lot of confused customers in a year.
Yeah, or I don't know, maybe this is not a great idea, but like a lot of games have implemented a menu system or like setting system where you know, it tells you like the amount of RAM you're using, and when you toggle a setting, it tells you like this is GPU intensive, this is VRAM intensive, this is CPU like system RAM intensive. Maybe it needs some type of system where like it tries to inform you like what this is going to do based on like the card it detects in your system or something like
Yeah,
that.
not advised for, which you
Yeah,
could. You
stuff
don't even
like
need
that.
to. You don't even necessarily need to scan it. I mean, that would help some people who. Well, a lot of people don't even remember what components they have. So it'd
That's
help
true.
people like that. But you could just put DLSS ultra quality mode and call it that, and go not advised for pre 50 series or something. Yeah. This piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB. Innovation starts with an idea, and JLC PCB helps you bring your ideas to life. With their one-stop manufacturing service, you can get everything you need in one place, whether that's PCB fabrication, SMT assembly, 3D printing, and CNC machining. And yes, from rapid prototyping to full production, they handle every step with precision, speed, and at a reasonable cost, especially when it comes to their 6-layer PCBs. On that last point, their 6-layer PCBs allow fast, clean routing and avoid the struggle of squeezing signals onto their usual 2 or 4-layer boards. More routing means more freedom and faster development, fewer redesigns, and therefore quicker project completions. Spend less time fighting routing limits and more time building the actual project. And you know, 6-layer PCBs are usually expensive, but JLC PCB offers one of the most affordable industry prices. So whether you're a maker, an engineer, or a global hardware company, JLC PCB empowers you to turn your ideas into a reality. Faster and smarter. Support Moore's Law is dead through the link below. Yes, just clicking on the link below helps the channel a ton, but obviously if you need their services, you can also get a really great price on 6-layer PCBs as well if you follow the directions and use the offer codes and coupons below. So please support Moore's Law is dead at JLC PCB today. All right. Speaking of screwing over your previous generation customers, let us move on to story number 2. AMD FSR on RDNA 3 status update. First quoting from Tom's Hardware before adding the write-up and actually a new leak, really. At CES 2026, AMD used an interview with PC World to restate its official position on FSR Redstone while softening the surrounding edges. During the interview, AMD Chief Software Officer and Head of Graphics Hardware, Andrei Zadrovic,
Drakovic? If that's right,
Drakovic.
give me a high five. If that's wrong, don't blame me. There are too many weird consonants next to each other.
So for an English word, which it is not, obviously, a lot of consonants up front there. But Andre said the full Redstone feature set remains tied to RDNA 4 hardware. At the same time, he stopped short of shutting down the idea of an experimental Redstone build for RDNA 3 users who are trying to make it work on their own. Redstone bundles several machine learning-driven graphics features, including upscaling and frame generation under a single umbrella. AMD has been clear that these features are designed around the performance characteristics of RDNA 4. This person reiterated that their position, saying the decision is not about artificially segmenting their products, but whether the hardware can deliver a consistent experience across a wide range of games and systems. If enabling a feature degrades performance or image quality, AMD does not see value in officially shipping it. So, yep, Radeon just made something confusing again. After teasing RDNA 3 would be getting FSR 4, I guess now called Redstone, for a year already. Yes, go back a year, like to March of 2025. They were teasing this, talking about bringing it to RDNA 3 kind of in interviews. Now they sort of seem to be backtracking, although after suggesting they might not bring FSR 4 to RDNA 3 this week, they then backtracked on that and said some experimental mode might be coming. So, all right, what the hell is going on? Well, A source reached out to me over the weekend and confirmed that unfortunately, at least for now, FSR 4 on RDNA 3 development has been paused. Yep, I'm putting quotes here. Paused. I asked multiple times. That's the word that I should use to describe what's going on. So to be clear, FSR 4, or at least FSR 4 enhancements, a la like what PSSR 2 is going to get, are still planned though for the PS5 Pro, which means they could come to RDNA 3. Also, there are currently hacks out there anyways on PC that force FSR 4 onto RDNA 3. By most accounts, they perform very well. And finally, I am directly told though, that's why I use the word paused, that FSR 4 on RDNA 3 has not been officially canceled behind the scenes, just that they are redirecting all resources right now from to make Redstone work better and also to open source it. Yes, you heard me right. I believe AMD has either teased or said this out there as well. They want to open source all of the FSR software, all of it from 1 to 4 and all the little things attached to it as soon as possible. And right now that is the priority. So yeah, AMD therefore was pretty mad at the early reception of Redstone. I don't remember
Why would they be surprised by it? But good on you, AMD.
Me and Dan were very critical of the Redstone release, and they're especially worried next to the hype being generated, pun intended, by DLSS 4.5. So all available resources are working on making Redstone on FSR 4 compete as well as possible with DLSS 4.5, and then also to become open source. And so who the heck knows when FSR 4 will come to RDNA 3. However, one more time, my source would not agree that it might be canceled, as they do not think that is the plan right now, at least probably. Honestly, I think AMD fans need to tell Radeon to wake up. Seriously, people need to start spamming them on Twitter, getting things going. Other tech tubers I encourage to make videos about this. AMD, you can't tease FSR 4 coming to RDNA 3. You can't, frankly, launch new Strix Halo and Gorgon Point products this year. And from what I've heard, maybe even some Zen 6 products. You can't launch all of these things for years to come with RDNA 3.5 and then not give it some version of the latest FSR, especially when you're bringing it to PS5 Pro. And especially when you've basically told consumers, like not even just my own leaks, but they basically said publicly it's happening. This sort of backtracking, I mean, this is the sort of thing that would make me go, maybe don't buy AMD actually, because they're full of shit. So I really think gamers need to make their voices heard, that whatever the hell they're doing right now, they've got to stop. They do need to bring FSR 4 or the closest thing they can to RDNA 3 and 3.5. And I don't know, make your voices heard, gamers.
Yep. At a certain point, it does seem like AMD is a lot more slapdash and just does what they're capable of or does what they are, tries to move as fast as they can and just throw stuff out there like when they need to. I mean, and that's been the problem with AMD software for a while. It's kind of a meme. Like Nvidia announces a software and then AMD like says like I don't know, some slide pops up a couple months later or even sooner after that, and it's like, oh, that we have a perfectly competing software feature, and then it comes out like a year and a half later. And it feels like a lot of this stuff is thrown together sometimes. And I for a minute I thought maybe Redstone wouldn't, but no, it's turning out to be the exact same BS that AMD tends to do with their software. Why they would I guess, announce this for RDNA 3 and not have it, I don't know. I guess the way they did it with like a little menu thing in their announcement, they can like plausibly save face and be like, oh no, that was just like stand-in text. But you know that
no,
you don't
showed
put
it with
that
the
in there
7800 XT. That's complete bullshit.
You don't put that in there without some level of intention to that. And then it's especially bizarre when you see like the hacked or unofficial versions of FSR 4 work well on RDNA 3.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know how AMD's official supported version of that could be worse. Like maybe it's the exact same level of performance, but that's fine. FSR 4 works fine. And I guess it's a little funny putting this with this next to the DLSS 4.5 story, because we kind of have like almost the opposite criticism where it's like, well, if there is huge degradation of performance, maybe your system has become a bit too complicated, and that's like AMD's face saving measure. But the thing is, like, we don't really see that in practice. Like FSR 4, maybe it doesn't deliver the exact same gains you get for uh, versus with RDNA 3 versus RDNA 4, but it still gives you gains in performance, improved image quality, and I don't know if you're using RDNA 3 on or the FSR 4 on RDNA 3 or their like winnowed down version of it. Maybe you call it 4 or and like they call the version for RDNA 4 4.1, or maybe they call it like 3.8 or something for RDNA 3. Like I don't think it's that complicated, but I guess this is what we're getting. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know really what else to add except
Bad AMD.
except here we go again, AMD. I mean, the only thing that really comes to mind here is I believe talking about this with Ancient Gameplays last year, and he said even an experimental option would probably be enough. Literally, it just
Oh,
says
sure.
forces to work on RDNA 3 GPU so that they don't have to download some separate piece of software. Like you can just press Alt R for the Alt Radeon tab and just even check that it's on. But there is a part of me that goes, I just don't think that's enough, AMD. Frickin' put it directly into the games. Like, come on. At a minimum, the official experimental mode thing, that's the minimum they should do. But there is
Uh,
a part of me that's like, if people can just make this work on a separate app on their own, surely you can have some version of it just in games. I don't get it.
yeah, I don't dislike the idea of like having an experimental or beta mode with a different name for a feature that might be a little bit borked. Like just okay, you do with this what you will. If you have RDNA 3, you can technically use our version of of FSR 4. But I do think it is more essential they get an official version of it supported, given that RDNA 3 should be their highest volume architecture that's out right now, or a
And it
variant
will
of
continue to
RDNA
be
3.
probably because of APUs. I mean, if
Yeah,
you really
that's what I
think about
mean.
it,
For
but even just because APUs are most of their graphic sales, I mean, it probably
yeah,
will remain that for years.
yeah, for like what the next year or two, like I don't think RDNA 4. I don't remember all the iterations that are supposed to be for their APUs, but it's going to be a while that RDNA 3 or 3.5 is the main architecture they're selling as far as GPUs go or iGPUs go. Your cutting edge software really does need to go to that,
That's why I think
especially
it should be official. Yeah,
especially if you don't want to look like a half-assed bargain bin version of your competitors, which
I agree.
I mean they lucked out that Intel can't make a CPU anymore to save their life, with the exception of one of our stories, I guess. But
Yeah, maybe that's
like
about to change.
if Intel becomes resurgent, like it could very quickly turn into a situation where it's like, okay, sure, your CPUs are still great, AMD, but your iGPUs are starting to suck. Like that would be an interesting turn of events that if AMD is getting complacent, I think could happen in I can't remember the name, think of the name of it right now for some reason, but like the Panther Lake or the successor to the successor of Panther
So
Lake.
there's Razor Lake that
Yeah,
comes after Nova Lake, but it's Hammer Lake is the one that should get NVIDIA graphics. And already Panther Lake is tooting to being the first APU with 4 times multi-frame gen. Also, they call it frame smoothing. They say it is not direct performance. Good for you, Intel,
thank
for
you.
doing something honest.
Because we've talked about that, should be called it should be a motion blur filter frame gen. That's more
It
akin to
shouldn't
what
be
it
on
is.
any direct, charts for performance because that's not what it is. And Panther Lake's gonna have 4 times multi-frame gen. I think before, I guess you have 2 frame gen right now on there before AMD gets it on anything. But then, like, what happens if, like, Intel didn't announce Battle Mage at CES? What if that allows their smaller team to have the resources to just focus on Battle Mage graphics and really what is Celestial and Panther Lake? But let's not get into that. And like they actually are able to just support a couple of iGPUs. They start fixing their driver issues because they stop trying to make all these dedicated cards they just don't have the bandwidth to support. And then you have this situation in a couple of years, you have like Nova Lake graphics and Razor Lake graphics. and they're still competing with some RDNA 3.5 integrated graphics, even low end. Like think about Panther Lake, which we'll talk about. It's worth noting most of the Panther Lake lineup only has 4 execution units as opposed to the or XE cores, I guess they call them now, instead of the 12 in the full one. So that actually might be as weak as Kraken. Okay, but what if it still gets a modern upscaling tech and XE super sampling that they say is better than FSR 3, and AMD doesn't have that for their Kraken rebrands or their little Medusas. This makes no sense. Then you're going to start going with just get Intel. They have better integrated graphics, and then Nvidia will make the graphics chips for Intel eventually. And those are going to, I mean, they're going to, like you said, I really think you nailed it. Like AMD's going to more and more just look like this Timu brand.
Yeah, especially when like I do think like at CES this year, Intel was heavily indicating that like, hey, we can put we don't have to have an Intel iGPU or on our systems. Like AMD's APUs could be completely screwed in the future if a big deal goes through with Nvidia and Intel to co-produce a chip.
Yeah. So, or even before that, if again, Intel finally dropping the masquerade that they can compete in dedicated graphics, just starts focusing on a couple APUs every couple of years, and the drivers are good, and they have better upscaling tech. And it's not just better than what AMD has in dedicated, but like AMD's still selling these RDNA 3.5 chips. I mean, they will just look like this budget brand that you only get if they're cheap. And that's something I thought AMD was trying to get away from.
Well, they successfully did, but
For like a month.
could be a flash in yeah, could be a drop in the bucket if that's not if they don't continue to execute. Like that's what happens when when you get complacent. Like learn what Intel needs to learn too.
So yeah, I will say, I'll close this conversation on just AMD don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here. Like I keep hearing that, especially with Zen 6, they want to go hard at laptop market share. If the generation they decide we're just going to go all out on laptop, we're going to be as aggressive as possible, is the generation where they don't have any frame gen on their APUs, that like any multi-frame gen, any modern upscaling tech, and they're actually still pairing this outdated crap against Intel, who will have Panther Lake and Nova Lake and Razor Lake chips that have tech that's maybe not as good as Nvidia, but certainly looks closer to that than AMD. The one gen you said you were going to go for at AMD, you forgot you actually got to support your products with good software, which was weird because you didn't have this issue the previous gen. So again, I really think gamers need to tell AMD you're not going to tolerate this. I mean, you should expect to get most of the best software you can get when you buy AMD over time, and not have to worry about them just not supporting it.
Yeah.
In fact, Jensen Huang openly said that they might look into porting more of their modern software into their older graphics cards. I mean, like, what the hell's going on, AMD? You're starting to look like the one who doesn't support their products the most, when Intel was like falling apart because they're shipping like Raptor Lake graphics that don't have any driver support. Like, you had AMD.
Yeah, I mean, that's the brand AMD became the success that it is on. Is we support our products in our platforms for a long time.
We don't nickel and dime you or make you buy the newest thing. Yeah. All right. Well, let us now move on to story number 3. AMD confirms Zen 6 Venice design leaked by this channel. So before we dive into the majority of AMD's CES announcements, I think it's important to separately highlight, as its own story, the fact that AMD confirmed my Venice design leaks from years ago. The same people that got me this info, this is why it's important, are the same people that got me info about Zen 6 clock speed targets, other design details, a lot of things, in other words, that people are skeptical of. So it's not just that. Seeing Lisa Su hold up a diagram I leaked years ago is exciting, not to brag, but also because it's like, oh, so yeah, all that other info's got to be correct, or at least when it was leaked, it was. But then in addition to that, she did confirm some details, loose details about Zen 6 Venice performance that when you deconstruct it, points to about a 30% uplift in per core performance. just totally in line with the IPC plus clock speed numbers that I said. But note, remember, this is for N2P. So what would an N2X over N4 product get? But yeah, Dan, what did you think about this?
I mean, it's exciting to see this stuff get confirmed, especially like since we've been talking about, I don't know, like a fundamental change in their core architecture when it comes to, or design or organization when it comes to Zen 6 and onward. Cool to see it get confirmed, and we've been talking about it for years.
Yeah. Karma Cry writes in, slightly goofy, yet slightly serious suggestion. There are a lot of phones that use LPDDR5X. Some launched even all the way back in 2023, and there are even some $500 phones out there that have 8 gigabytes of memory. Given how many people still upgrade phones every 1 to 3 years, could AMD, Sapphire, or best yet, Asus have a program where you send them your phone and then they take the RAM off of it and let you buy an AT4 or AT3 RDNA 5 GPU, which for those who don't remember, there's a video out, the Medusa Halo leak, which is that RDNA 5, the lower end dedicated cards, share graphics with APUs, meaning they use LPDDR5X. And it's funny where he goes, that maybe that would be slower memory or whatever, but you could try overclocking it. It's like, yeah, it's funny that this is a joke, but then it's like, but is it a joke? Because I'm seeing articles pop up where there's do-it-yourself kits being sold where they sell the DDR5 sticks and then just tell you how to solder on memory chips if you can get them off of your laptop.
I mean, the one thing I'll say is like it's a funny idea, but the amount they would want to charge for labor, I would assume would, maybe in a really weird clown world, that wouldn't end up being cheaper than just getting it, the AT4 with new LPDDR5X. But yeah, or I'm sure people are going to figure out how to modify it themselves. Well, not figure out. I'm sure people will be modifying themselves online, but
yeah. So look, no, I don't think this sort of program would work, but I will say this. We've already seen numerous reports. I mean, I reported on it with the guy Ted, who owns Silver Knight PCs. Gamers Nexus has reported on this. Like in Asia, especially, there are these outfits that go through garbage, take out old laptops, graphics cards, maybe even now buy up some if they can get them cheap enough, and then take the RAM off and put it on new stuff. I can tell you there's going to be a lot of people out there scrounging for phones and removing the RAM and then selling it back now.
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't expect this, and I wouldn't expect to see this out of AMD or Sapphire or one of their AIBs. But yeah, I don't know, a CD electronics shop might. I don't know where they're getting a bunch of RDNA 5 dies, at least, I guess, though, to do that, but...
Yeah, and I don't remember if I've read if this is a service that actually already does exist, but I would also suggest that, like, if there was a company that wanted to do this, it'd probably have to be a mom and pop operation. I really don't think it's a dumb idea to offer a GDDR6 upgrade program for 3070 owners, 3060 owners, even maybe 3060 laptop owners, where they could upgrade it to 12 gigabytes from 6. Like, there's a real shortage here, and honestly, a lot of these cards, specifically on the Nvidia side, would last a very long time if they just frickin' had 16 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, a 3070 is fantastic with 16 gigabytes. It still runs things great today. I would like a direct service to allow people to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool, but I would suspect, I guess I don't know, but I would suspect the AIBs and Nvidia/AMD themselves wouldn't be very
Mostly
happy
Nvidia.
about that if they were doing that.
Like if it got to any operation above the volume of like a few a week, they'd probably try to find a way to shut it down.
Yeah. Or just say we're not selling.
Don't you have right to repair?
Or, I mean, they could just stop selling to them. Maybe that would end in a lawsuit, but I don't know the ins and outs of the legality of that, I suppose.
Maybe for another episode with Hogue from Hogue Law. All right. Before we go to the next story here, I will instead to everyone's favorite thing, an ad from Micro Center. Like I said at the beginning, this episode is sponsored by Micro Center, and right now they are having a winter savings event. Click on the link in the description to check out all of their latest deals. And then they have another link to check out even more deals, which they want me to tell you guys that they do expect deals to be updated more often this month and this year because of what's going on with prices. So check that out, pin it, to your Google Chrome tabs to keep up with it. And then also they are opening up a new location, like I said before, in Austin, Texas. If you sign up to get information about it, you can get a 128 gigabyte flash drive for free. Otherwise, I don't know really what else there is to say about Micro Center, right, Dan? I mean, like I'm looking right now, they still have some 9070 XTs in stock at MSRP. They have 5060 Ti, 16 gigabytes in stock for $400. Actually, that's a pretty great deal in today's market. Actually, that's a fantastic deal with the 9060 XT being almost $400. So get these if you want good deals, because there are usually the best deals at Micro Center. That's why I keep partnering with them so much. It's easy to recommend them. What else were you going to say?
Some decent deals still exist at Micro Center.
I mean, they do.
Yeah. Or good deals, like especially in a market that is getting this crazy.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how long some of this lasts, because I still think there's a chance things might not get as bad as people think overall. But at a minimum, here we are in 2026, the supposed RAM apocalypse. And at Micro Center, you can get a 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte for $400, which will last you a long time. It's actually a pretty good balance. That's how much 16 gigabyte cards should cost, by the way, 400 or less, and you can get it right now. So support Moore's Law is dead by checking out Micro Center today. All right, now let us move on to story number 4. AMD Gorgon Point, Ryzen 7 9850X3D, and Ryzen 9 9950X3D2, kinda, announced. A week ago, AMD held their always much awaited CES keynote and unveiled multiple new products. Rarely for consumers this time, actually, despite this being called the Consumer Electronics Show. But joking aside, there were many non-AI things to note for us gamers. Namely, first of all, Gorgon Point, the hot pointification of Strix was revealed. And as expected, look, it seems 5 to 25% faster than Strix Point, will be more efficient, depending on the benchmark. Next, also as expected, new Strix Halo 388 and 392 products were unveiled, and with new, presumably cheaper laptops to utilize them as well. I saw Asus showed off I think it was the T14 or A14 Tough. So it'll be interesting to see the official pricing on that, because already someone sent me a link to the Z13 Flow. That's the gaming tablet from Asus with Strix Halo. One of those with a 395 and 64 gigabytes of RAM was like $1,900. So if that's how much that costs now, it'd be interesting to see what these beefed up graphical versions of Strix Halo, the 388 and 392, the 12 and 8 core with the full 40 compute units. I don't know. We'll see. It'd be interesting to see where that gets to, but that was also announced. And of course, there was also the reveal of the 9850X3D, a CPU that will be, as expected, faster than the 9800X3D. Although we don't know pricing yet, and AMD didn't say a thing about memory support. So as of now, there's really little reason to get crazy excited for this until we know the price to performance. And if it's getting the bin memory controllers I was told it would be. Of course, there's always the concern that they don't want to talk about better memory support, is that will just make everyone scream at them in the live chats like they did to Intel when they announced Panther, and half the comments were, boo AI, I want RAM. Anyways, though, there was one big admission, the 9950X3D2. So I was actually tipped off before the show ended that we were not going to see it and that it was pulled. And in fact, that's what happened. We did not see it. Now, I was later told that this was a RDNA 4 situation. You see, for people who don't remember, early in 2025, RDNA 4 was supposed to be unveiled at CES. In fact, partners had RDNA 4 graphics cards on display on the show floor, and they were told last minute by AMD they were not announcing it at CES. And in fact, they could show off their new coolers, but couldn't say what graphics card had them. And that seems to be happening again. And the same thing is happening. Asus accidentally, because it was so last minute, announced support for the 9950X3D2. I believe Gigabyte did. Also, a high yield friend of the channel who should be on soon also said that he's heard, like I have, nope, it's still coming out. It's still coming out. No, and I asked before we started recording, Dan, no one that like in the know knows why they pulled it last minute. So I don't know. It wasn't shown off. It's just still confirmed by multiple AIBs, me, High Yield, and I think a bunch of other people. So I guess it's still coming out. But why would they pull it? Well, this simple answer is I don't know, but I can speculate. I think there's a few reasons why they might have done this. First of all, perhaps one of the main selling points for the 9950 X32 is that it gets decent gains from utilizing faster memory for communication between its dual V-cache dies. And AMD knows that people don't want to be told that to get the best performance, they need to buy expensive memory. And so maybe they are waiting until what I'm again told still is Q3 is when memory prices should start coming down. And they want it for like a back to school or fall release when things are cheaper. Another option is just the AI of it all. Perhaps AMD doesn't want to launch more than they need to and support it with a marketing campaign until they are a little tired of talking about AI. And there's a third option. Where was Arrow Lake Refresh? I haven't seen anyone talking about this. Where is Arrow Lake Refresh?
Yeah.
Not just the B770. I don't know what Intel's doing. Perhaps AMD is saving this flagship for if it needs to maintain a performance lead against new Arrow Lake products. And if they don't, why launch it? Like when you are already making so much money off of cheaper to produce things. Additionally, the only other reason they would launch it is if Zen 6 is delayed for desktop, which I believe it is probably. And then Nova Lake comes out at the end of this year. And this is to keep the performance crown, at least in gaming, while minimizing the loss in multi-threading as much as possible with a cheaper flagship, kind of like Zen 3, if they ever did the dual V-cache model, overclocked it versus Alder Lake. But the thing is, where's Nova Lake too? We're not even seeing Nova Lake teasers. I've heard from some people that might be delayed until 2027. And so if Arrow Lake Refresh doesn't come out, or does it come out for a while and then Nova Lake is delayed, they almost don't have a reason to launch this. So that's what I would suggest. But either way, my opinion, it was a meh show and it wasn't very consumer for a consumer electronics show. Oh, and AMD's AI can't make their logo correctly, and that's pathetic. I don't know if you saw that.
I mean, it looks cool and bendy, like AMD's logo. It always is, and not like what AI seems to do to every image, make it look weird and bendy.
Yeah, the melted wax.
Yes, issue with logo. AI.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, fourth theory, Tom, what if that 7,000 or do they say 7-ton server rack is just too heavy and they couldn't get it on stage without breaking it? Like this was the straw that would have broken the camel's back. The 9950 X3D2.
It's just too heavy?
Yeah.
Like they might make this noise?
Yeah.
I didn't tell you ahead of time. I have some Jensen Wang drops.
For a second, I thought I was like, oh no, did I just like really poorly do that joke? And I probably did, but then you really upsold me on that one. So thank you, Tom. Screw you.
I knew if I didn't tell you ahead of time, it would make you laugh the first time I did a drop. Which who knows? Maybe I'll do more. But yeah, I mean, look, Gorgon point, exactly what we expected. 9850 X3D. Pretty much what we expected, maybe slightly below what it was about weeks, because my expectations range from barely anything to surprisingly good. It seems like it's okay. 9950 X3D2, more questions than answers, but it definitely exists. And the Strix Halo refresh looks pretty solid. I don't know what else there really is to say here.
Yeah, Strix Halo refresh is just like, I mean, unless something went really wrong or something, or that this is a bigger upgrade than they're letting on. Like we know what Strix Halo, we know what the updates are going to be to that. And I don't know, what are they calling it again? The 9850 X3D. I don't know. No, 9850 X3D, right? Yeah.
98? Oh, never mind.
Yeah, 9.
Go on.
It's a... I'm more and more feel like I'm defaulting to my opinion of like when Intel started releasing their KS models, maybe less critical because the Intel KS models increasingly got like,
so literally
it gives you 2% better performance and it lights your house on fire. Like, so it's not that bad. So I guess it's technically a better CPU, but who cares? And then the 9950 X3D D2 or whatever I pray to God that once this gets officially announced, they make it a slightly less cumbersome, but we'll see. I mean, that's the thing I think I'm the most unknown to me, or like has the most potential for surprises. But so I'm excited to see when that actually gets officially announced. But screw it. This is the Consumer Electronics Show. Why would we show consumer electronics? Let's show a 7-ton server rack instead for a while and talk about how big of a rack it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. The Jensen drops are all I have to really say about Nvidia's announcements because I found it so boring and uninteresting. I think the one thing I will point out that, I don't know, maybe it was because I was just taking so many notes to prepare for the video I did on last Monday, or Monday before last Monday, technically when this comes out, depending on who you are. And so maybe I didn't pick up on the smaller facial twitches and little jokes because I was just concentrating on getting my script done while writing down information. But I did see a lot of people in the Moore's Law Discord say that Lisa herself seemed annoyed with the AI. Like she made jokes about how silly AI was. It's like, oh, maybe we could say it one more time. So if anything, though, I'll give Lisa Su some credit that she seems to be doing her job as a CEO. She's supposed to make as much money for her shareholders as she can, and that's through AI right now. But it does seem to be annoying her a bit.
Thank you, Lisa.
Not enough to not show the melted wax AMD logo, though. So we'll limit how much credit we give her. But geez,
yeah.
All right, let us now move on to story number 5. Intel Panther Lake unveiled. Quoting from Notebook Check twice before write-up. All right, so the first article from Notebook Check. Today at CES, Intel unveiled Intel Core Ultra Series 3 processors, the first AI PC platform built on Intel 18A process technology that was designed and manufactured in the United States. Within the Intel Core Ultra Series 3 mobile lineup, a new class of Core Ultra X9 and X7 processors come packed with the highest performing integrated Intel Arc graphics. They are purpose-built for multitaskers that handle advanced workloads like gaming, creation, and productivity on the go. The top SKU features up to 16 cores, 12 XC cores, and 50 NPU tops, delivering up to a 60% better multi-threaded performance, and over 77% faster gaming performance and up to 27 hours of battery life compared to the previous gen. Intel Core Ultra Series 3 delivers competitive advantages in critical edge AI workloads with up to 1.9 times higher large language model performance, up to 2.3 better performance per watt per dollar on end-to-end video analytics, and up to 4.5 times higher throughput on vision language action models. But this was an article Notebook Check put out. Is the Intel Arc B390 fast enough to end AMD's dominance in gaming handhelds and to offer reasonable game performance laptops that don't support a dedicated graphics card? Well, at CES 2026, we've been able to try out a few games on a Lenovo IdeaPad Pro 5i in order to compare the performance of Intel Core Ultra X9 388H and Arc B390i GPU against its notable competitors. Our comparison shows that the Arc B390 integrated graphics of Panther Lake can exceed the gaming performance of the Radeon 890M, at least the previous Gen 1 and Strix, by more than 80% in some games. Compared to the older Arc 140T, the 390M is nearly 80% faster in some titles. In Baldur's Gate 3, the iGPU delivers virtually the same performance as a dedicated RTX 4050 laptop GPU. But in Cyberpunk 2077, the NVIDIA graphics card was 20% better. AMD's powerful Ryzen AI Max Plus 395 with Radeon 860S, though, is oftentimes twice as fast as Panther Lake's integrated graphics. And I saw a Cyberpunk benchmark that I think Gerard could put on screen here, where you see like Intel beating AMD's, I want to say it was by like 60%. And by AMD's, I mean AMD's Strix point, so not Gorgon. And then I believe Halo over doubled its performance. So, yeah, what do I think about that then? Well, overall, I would say that Panther Lake indeed seems solid enough to stand out on its own. At a minimum, it should beat Gorgon Point in single threading by a little, when gaming by at least 40%, if not much more than that. We have to just wait for final reviews, and offer better efficiency. All of that together means it has its own unique business case that it can offer to stand out from the competition, and that is a huge relief after years of Intel offering really just worst versions of AMD products across the board. However, it does not cost that much different to make versus a Halo 388 chip based on my math. And so that's really what they should probably be comparing it to. And AMD agrees with me, saying that Intel, openly accusing Intel of comparing their flagship against AMD's lower mid-range APU. Although they're all called premium, aren't they, AMD? So what do you? Otherwise, I don't. The joke I made there is on AMD's roadmaps behind the scenes. They go like ultra
Everything
premium,
is
premium,
enthusiast.
elite. Like it's like everything's enthusiast, all the way down to Kraken or something. But like otherwise, I don't have much else to say about Panther Lake besides I want to see final reviews. I want to see that the drivers work well. And I also want to know how often the 12XE core APU, that's the top one, are in sub $1,500 laptops compared to most of a lineup that seems to have a third the XE cores. Also, I hear from Just Josh. I talked with him behind the scenes, for a friend of the show. He should be on again soon. That the laptops he's testing, and he has multiple Panther like laptops, by the way, run very cool despite the performance. He said they're like they were playing Cyberpunk, and this performance that was like, like 50%, sometimes double performance, whatever it was, over Strix Point, that it was not getting hot at all playing that game. So that's exciting. But what do you think about Panther Lake, Dan?
I think it's a sign of Intel heading in the right direction. Not too much more than that. It's not like they're, like you said, it's not like they're beating Strix Halo this time around, but I don't know. They're offering solid iGPU performance, and I hope that's what they continue trying to do rather than compete at the enthusiast level by consistently delivering cards 2 years later than they should be out. Even like with that timing, like 2 years earlier wouldn't have been that impressive for what it was. So like, yeah, keep plugging away at this, Intel. And I don't know, at a certain point I think they're going to have a deal with Nvidia, but hopefully whatever comes after Panther Lake, they're able to more seriously compete at the high end. But I don't know. This iGPU is pretty strong, and I think it offers like good entry level performance. And if these things stay cool, that I would say suggests at least that they probably don't chug too much power. So in the right laptops, okay, this is great. Just I hope they're not trying to compete with Strix Halo, and they know the product they're selling.
Yeah, well, but that's the real question, right? Because this is something that I pointed out in the Moore's Law is Dead Discord. If you like when it comes to pricing, like it's worth reminding people, I think, over and over that whenever Strix Halo goes a bit below 2,000 or even around 2,000, those laptops from Asus and HP always sell out. And I know because our mom was asking what laptop she should get, and I was seeing a lot of laptops jump up in price because of RAM. And I'm like, well, if some of these laptops that were 1,000 become 1,500, I just spend $2,000 to get a 395 Strix Halo HP laptop. Like I spend the extra $500 because right now those are not overpriced. And when she checked, it was sold out. I don't know if it's come back into stock again. Maybe, I don't know. But like you do see these things constantly sell out when they go on sale. And that's why they cost more than the cheaper laptops. If you add up the silicon of a Strix Point 12 core and an RTX 5060, it's roughly the same amount of 4nm silicon as if you just had a full 395 Strix Halo. And in fact, it's less. It's actually more, I should say, if you remove one of the CCDs for like a 388 or Ryzen, whatever it's called, AI Max 380. So once you factor in, there's basically the same amount of 4nm silicon with a Strix Halo laptop and a 5060 plus Strix Point laptop. Well, the Strix Point 5060 laptop has two cooling acts. Like they have to cool two chips, not one. And also the 5060 uses as much energy as a Strix Halo alone. So you're basically just doubling your cooling costs, having a more complicated motherboard layout. And then you have to add GDDR6 to the system you don't to the other one. Sometimes, depending on how much RAM total is in each one. And with all that in mind, there's no reason Strix Halo laptops, even the flagship one, can't be $1,500. The 5060 Strix Point ones are often $1,500 with 32 gigs of RAM right now. There's no reason, people. And so, so far I've seen Panther Lake systems listed for $1,300 with the top chip, by the way, or one of the top chips. So that's encouraging. That's what I hope to see. But I just think people need to remember, it wouldn't surprise me if by late night, like that Asus Tough laptop, eventually you had $1,200 388 and $1,500 395 laptops. And in that world, I know which one I'm getting. I'm getting the 395 over Panther Lake that gives me 16 full cores that crush it in multi-threading, that give me over double the graphics performance, an NPU that's just as good, and more stable graphics drivers. Like I know which one I'm probably going to get. It's more interesting if Panther Lake can maintain a price between, or even hopefully the same as Gorgon Point, although I find that unlikely. Because if they can do that, then again, perfect. You know, if you have $1,500 Strix Halo, $1,200 Panther Lake, $1,000 Gorgon Point, I think you have a
Sure, yeah.
situation where I would actually recommend Panther Lake to a lot of people. It's like, yeah, look, it's like 20%, 30% less. And yeah, the graphics aren't as good, but they're definitely good enough, and you have better efficiency than Strix Halo. So this is a totally a good, solid choice. That's what it needs to do. Now, again, what I'm excited about is it seems like they actually might accomplish what me and you said they needed to.
Yeah, but definitely though, with the quote unquote budget, like Strix Halo coming out, that could really screw over, if not Panther Lake as a whole, a lot of models that like the OEMs expect to be a bit more premium than they actually are.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess we'll see. One other thing to bring up as well. And it comes to mind because Kerry Nosugata, a contributor at Moore's Law, asked me about this before we started recording, Dan. He asked, any word about what OEMs think about Panther Lake? Because, you know, I put out that leak where I'm telling you, an OEM said to me that behind the scenes, they call it Pathetic Lake. Had they changed their tune? The answer is no. I don't know why.
Okay,
OEMs I
well,
talk to, they don't hate Panther Lake, but they're not that excited. And my best answer would be, why would OEMs not be as excited for Panther Lake why would they not be, at a minimum, why would they not be more excited for this than they were for Lunar Lake or certainly Meteor Lake? It just seems odd to me. And maybe they are by now, but like, I feel like they should be ecstatic. If they had any enthusiasm for Lunar Lake, they should be ecstatic about Panther Lake. And the best explanation I can give is, you know, I've got a Panther Lake versus Gorgon thing that Gerard could put on screen. Like, if you actually break it down, there's a lot here that isn't like a complete slam dunk. Like, maybe it wins single threading by like how much though? 5%, 10, like, is it even 10? Multi-threading actually looks the same. Who knows? Gorgon Point might win multi-threading slightly. Okay, so we got a win in single on Intel, win on multi or a tie maybe for AMD. All right, what about integrated graphics? I don't know. Intel wins by 50%, let's say. That's a big win. Right, but they might be concerned about drivers if you're an OEM, and that's where they get most returns, is people who have driver issues. All right, but then what about the NPU? Oh, AMD's NPU is actually like 20% faster. Oh, what about, you know, like, you could go down the list and it's like,
yeah.
It's not like AMD wins here, multi-threading and NPU. Nvidia wins single threading and GPU, and then has better efficiency, but AMD costs half as much. So I don't know. Like, you could see, but I still think there's something going on here where I think OEMs should be more excited based on how they've acted in the past comparatively. And this just tells you they just don't get as easily excited about Intel even more, even though I think people should be excited about Panther Lake. I think that's
I mean, there is a factor, especially when you're in like a big company. Like, I mean, I can just imagine they're kind of just over it, and maybe mentally they're just done with Intel for the next couple generations until they actually demonstrate that they can be a partner that makes, you know,
consistently
CPUs consistently. Because yeah, a CPU that a good CPU generation that's a one-off for like a DIY or whatever, I'll just buy it if I need it, but or if that's when I happen to build. But I think that calculus is more complicated when you're HP.
Yeah. Jensen Wang, Nvidia isn't a bubble, writes in and says, Tom Peterson has stated in multiple videos about how frame generation is about creating a more smooth experience and not a performance metric. With him saying this, do we have to accept he can say things without lying, that he's actually capable of it, or is frame gen all about performance? Yes, I guess I will say Tom Peterson said one thing that wasn't a lie, although I have to admit, I still do not know why any professional website or tech tuber talks to this person that lied to them for 3 generations.
And I don't know, when you lie constantly and like that's still the way they're touting it, it's like, oh, good confession, I guess. But why are you still lying in your big announcements about frame gen?
Or you get, I don't want to get into it.
Yeah,
I'll
we
get
don't
triggered if I
have to.
think about Tom Peterson too much. Well, speaking of getting triggered, let's talk
Hmm?
about a story that a lot of people are probably a little triggered about right now. With story number 6. This piece of content is brought to you by the Minis Forum DEG2 Thunderbolt and Oculink dock. That's right, I'm not often impressed by eGPU docks. I mean, there are so many companies making them right now, but the one that Minis Forum put together with the DEG2 is actually pretty interesting because it has a switch that lets you switch between Thunderbolt 5 and Oculink, meaning not only should this be able to add an eGPU to anything you have, whether it's a laptop, gaming handheld, or a mini PC, it can actually be connected to 2 devices at the same time. You could have your normal, Minis Forum mini PC set up with a monitor connected to like an RTX 4090, and then you could have a free port sitting out there so that if you have a laptop that you want to use with a GPU for some reason, you just plug it in to the other port, move the switch, and boom, now your laptop is using that same graphics card. And then it also has other nice quality of life things as well. You can mount an ATX or SFX PSU to it, and it also even has room for some USB ports and an M.2 drive so that when you are docking something to it, it actually acts like a dock that can add extra storage and I.O. And so for that reason, I really do recommend this thing. And if you're interested in it and want to support Moore's Law is Dead, make sure you check out the links below to the DEG2. Checking out those links helps the channel a ton, and following any directions to get the best price on them through those links helps the channel even more if you purchase it. So support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out the minis from DEG2 eGPU dock today. RTX 5090 confirmed to be effectively end-of-lifed, and RTX 50 Super and 6000 series launch dates speculated on, arguably in limbo. So no write-up. I just thought that we should touch on this because, again, people would expect us to. Number one, I just have to point out the 5090 effectively end-of-lifed. I did not say literally canceled, where I said there would be less supply, and I also said that prices for it would shoot up this year. They did. They're now ridiculously expensive. I was right. Too bad Hassan at WCCF Tech, who took an Nvidia press release, lied to gamers, and will not issue a retraction. Second, Copite also confirmed my report that the CPX was not the 6090. Now, I was one of the first people to say that. Like, a lot of people speculated, is this I think it was that Rubin chip, is this technically a 6090? Copite now openly says it isn't as well, and also suggests that the 60 series, so for the 6090, will probably be something that launches late 2027. I want to take a second to say, I also think that's likely when it's going to launch. I reached out to some people at Nvidia last week, just out of passing, because I saw these conversations going on online. Like, oh, what do you think? Certainly it seems unlikely this thing, like, basically one person at Nvidia said, yeah, I mean, it's not launching. The 60 series isn't launching at the end of 2026 unless you tell me you're hearing from your AMD sources that AMD is going to launch RDNA 5 then. And I said, no, I don't even think they're manufacturing it till mid next year. Maybe early next year for some of the chips, actually, but that's the earliest. He goes, oh, well, we don't feel the need to compete heavily with AMD until we know when they're launching, especially during this AI boom. So no, I think, this is stating the obvious right now, like not this year. And it sounds pretty unlikely they're going to launch the 60 series early next year. I think it is likely mid to late 2027 when they will launch the RTX 60 series. And therefore, if they do launch the 50 Super series in court like half a year from now, that would kind of be in between this like ridiculous 3-year life cycle, nearly 3-year life cycle we would have with the RTX 50 series as these continue to get more and more drawn out as Nvidia cares less and less about launching new graphics cards to gamers. So I also saw some people, I didn't read anything really but the headlines, but I know there's some people suggesting that the 50 Super series might be canceled. Totally possible, but there you go. So 60 series I think is probably mid to late 2027. Certainly not before the beginning of 27, before the first half of 2027. And the 50 Super series, at the minimum, what I can confirm is to the people I talk to, no one is getting tapped on the shoulder to get ready for a launch yet, and they probably will be in a few months if they're gonna do it this year.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the 50 Super Series only really makes sense at this point if the 60 Super, the 60 series is also pretty largely delayed to like the very tail end of 2027. Then like I don't know. I could see a scenario where it makes sense to launch the 50 Super series in I don't know, late this year or something. But that's the what this RAM shortage is going to do. They're going to shift focus onto things that make a lot more money. Why would you launch the Super series in this environment? It really doesn't make sense. Oh,
Yeah, I don't
that's
know.
why.
I don't know. I mean, it all depends on if, yeah, like, because it only really makes sense to do if AMD has some sort of response, which I don't hear about that
Yeah.
happening yet,
Yeah.
unfortunately. On that note, though, we do have a voicemail here from Techno.
Mhm.
Hello, Tom and Dan. Just thought I would get one of the last voicemails in for the year, or maybe the last if no one else submits one after me.
Nobody else did.
I was just curious on what the ideal RDNA 4 refresh would be within your minds.
I mean, it'd be if it were to have happened, and at this point, I think me and you, Dan, can say that we don't think it
Yeah.
is probably going to happen. Although, again, you know, RDNA 5 isn't launching until, I believe, mid to late 2027. So there's a chance it could happen if the RAM shortages improve and they still have a whole year before the next gen. Just like that is what would make the 50 Super Series launch. But if it were to happen, in my mind, the ideal would be if they could launch the equivalent of the RX 580 over the 480, like a 10% faster 9070 XT, call it the 975, just drop it in at $600. Because if they were able to do that, they would have something dangerously close to a 5080 for $600. And then if they could just go to $800 and give us like a GDDR7 32 gigabyte model, or even 900 or 1000 that beats the 5080, you know, that 9080 XT, those two things I think would actually move the market quite a bit. I continue to believe that a lot of people that will, especially if the 5090 continues to be $5 or $4 grand, which I think it will, and you have a 32 gigabyte card that's only 30% weaker, even 40%. I think there's a lot of people that will say, I'll get that for a fifth the price, you know, so that's what it would be. But I also think it would be a laptop release, like some 990M, because I think good bins of the 9070 XT could easily compete with the 5090 laptop edition, you know.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, 9060 with like 12 gigs of RAM, if they could do that, maybe would be somewhat interesting, I guess. And then like you said, 9070 XT refresh that's like higher clocked with more RAM. But
yeah, so, but again, I think right now it's kind of all a bunch of nothing to talk about this early. Like, could it happen still? It could, but it's not happening in the next few months. So I think for now, let's not worry about it.
Yeah.
AI generated fish writes in and says, I had thoughts. Read the Nvidia Super Series and laptop. This looks like a pretty terrible year for laptops. No, it's not. Panther Lake looks awesome. Awesome. It looks awesome. Panther Lake looks awesome. There's Strix Halo refreshes. We have cheaper laptops being announced for that. Gorgon Point looks like a solid uplift. AI generated fish. In fact, I mean, I have a picture here from B&H Photography and MSI Prestige. It's an OLED laptop with 32 gigabytes RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, and the top integrated graphics Panther Lake, 1300. That's great. That's a fantastic deal. And so, assuming that's not just an outlier, like, no, I think we're seeing evidence here actually that they can still get RAM for reasonable enough prices. So I don't think this is a bad year for laptops. I think this is actually a better year than last year, possibly.
Yeah, unless
the doom and gloom,
unless the RAM shortage really skyrockets prices in the next month or two or something, then,
more than it already is, which I feel like we're at where we're going to be at.
Yeah, or I guess if you're just coming from the perspective of like, yeah, this is a refresh cycle, so like everything is more iterative than it was last time around, I guess. I mean, Panther Lake, I guess, isn't a refresh, but most stuff is refreshes. So, and well, I guess I lump Panther Lake in there too, because I don't think it's offering a true new level of performance. It's just
it is.
I guess it's a new mix of performance, I guess, but it's like in that like that race of performance that you would expect to see.
No, they have not brought 5080 desktop performance to integrated graphics. Okay, sure. They haven't done that.
And like Strix Halo, I don't know what you want to call it, refresh. Not re. I guess we'll call it a refresh, but that's it's going to be worse multi-threading, but we know what gaming performance it's going to get. Like, so there's nothing really new there, I guess, technically, but I mean, it's going to go into cheaper products for more consumers. I think that's exciting in its own right.
Yeah, so AI generated fish. You are the resident hater of laptops, I've noticed in the Moore's Laws of Discord, which maybe we need that, to get the perspective. But I just, your actual question here: how likely do you think it is that Nvidia Super launches later in the year? Especially for laptop, I don't. I think if they were going to, it would be CES 27, because presumably even if desktop 60 series launches late next year, the laptop wouldn't until the following year. So that's what I think they would save it for. They would save it. Yeah, and that would actually make a lot of sense to me. A Nvidia 50 Super laptop refresh at CES 2027, because then it will be competing with RDNA 5 Halo products, and Nvidia would want that. Mm-hmm. So I actually like the idea of that happening at CES, but not this year. I mean, you never know if we're back to school, but so far I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah.
Techno writes in, with Nvidia and MSI working closely together with the Z Lightning 5090, do you think the next gen of GPUs will have a liquid-cooled Founders alongside a fan-only Founders? No. I think it's just obvious. AMD had its flirtations with liquid cooling in their graphics cards for a few gens, and they were cool. But I think Nvidia has actually been demonstrated they are absurdly stubborn and not wanting to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, remember the Titan Z?
Oh, no, wait.
That was the dual RTX. That was the dual GTX 5 780, basically. That underperformed AMD's liquid cooled 295 X2. And it's like, AMD was like, hey, it's 2 slots. It has a liquid cooler, though, and it is actually stronger than 290Xs put together. So this thing's awesome. And NVIDIA was like, we insist on trying to cool 500 watts on 2 chips with fans. And they had this like clunky looking 3-slot card that I believe launched for like $3,000 and lost half its value in 2 months. Like, it was a complete joke. If NVIDIA's unwilling to do liquid cooling for that, I think they've telegraphed to us they don't want to do liquid cooling. And now look at what they've achieved with the 5090. They're cooling like 600 watts with a dual slot cooler. I don't think they need liquid cooling.
Yeah, I was going to say, and from that day forward, Jensen said, we will produce the most over-designed air cooling system to date that is technologically very impressive, but kind of unnecessary for the cards we're putting out right now. Still cool, cooling though.
And let's remember, in the labs, I already leaked that Titan cooler. And other leaks have shown other angles that it was like a wind tunnel design inside of that cooler I leaked. So they've already got this weird design where it's like, what, 3 or 4? I think it's 4 slots. And they make it like they take the GPU and they put it on its side to have a wind tunnel blow through the entire 4-slot cooler. And I think they developed that in case they ever want to do something that requires 1200 watts.
Yeah.
And that's what they will do. That's why they developed that cooler, in case they needed to do a 1200 watt cooler to compete with to beat AMD, I should say, not compete. And again, think about that. They made a wind tunnel turbine, like 4-slot cooler. That tells you how much they don't want to do liquid cooling if they were if there were no liquid coolers in the labs, but there was this ridiculous thing, is what I would say. Okay, let us now move on to the wrap up. These are, of course, the stories that we think deserve a discussion, but do not deserve a full 10-minute story. And we have quite a lot today, but that's not really a surprise because it was CES. Intel Wildcat was spotted. It looks like an entry core. Like XE, it uses XE3, like little APU. It's
Lunar Lake
kit.
kind of.
Yeah, it's like a weaker Lunar Lake.
Yeah.
Is what it. Well, weaker in the GPU department. Lunar Lake. I don't have much to say about it. I've also heard of this code name, so there it is. Also, there are basically endless stories of RAM espionage. I'm trying to find, was it 10 former Samsung employees arrested on industrial espionage charges for even Chinese chipmaker 10 nanometer tech. And there's
Yeah,
tons
that's a
of
big
different
deal.
RAM heist stories that are out there. Samsung extended the life of DDR4. So again, that all of these are linked to the RAM shortage. I don't have much to say about them. You know, the second you start making RAM kits cost $500 is the second they start being stolen. You
It's
know,
almost like sand is the new gold or something, bro.
this Keanu Reeves puts on glasses. Some weird trailer. Oh, we already talked about this. So I'll just delete that. Nvidia did unveil Vera Rubin, but I don't have that much to say about their press conference. Besides that, I mean, look, it's enormous. AMD's new AI MI, what is it, 455X, I believe, is absolutely enormous. I don't think that there's really much to say about it except this is what's eating up all the capacity.
Yep, thank you for that.
And then what else do we have here? Yeah, so also the Minis Forum BD395i was shown off. This is a Strix Halo APU Mini ITX motherboard with a full times 16 PCIe 5.0 slot and 128 gigabytes of RAM built in.
Seems kind of cute.
Yeah, and it has its own cooler as well. So yeah, let me look at how this works. So does it have a fan that cools it out the back? I think so. So this would be your CPU, GPU, cooler, and you could add a graphics card later. I'd be curious what this costs, because honestly, if this was like less than $1,000, I might recommend it to a lot of people, because you're getting like at least a $300, if not $400 GPU. Arguably, I know people are going to say 9060 XT is stronger. It's like, I know, but this has more RAM. I don't want to argue about it. You know, let's say at least $300 GPU and at least a $500 CPU. And then, yeah, if this is $1,000 or less, I think this is a bargain given the current RAM shortage. So that's pretty cool. Moving over to some console news. Xbox has massive performance issues if you have a lot of friends on your friends list, apparently.
Yeah, I saw that. Not much to add, just other than, hey, Microsoft, that's what Sony's supposed to do. They're supposed to have the weird, stupid bugs associated with their online.
Yeah. You know, here's the funny thing, though. When I first saw this headline, I was like, just like scrolling on my phone or something. I was like, oh, this is probably some esoteric niche thing that can happen, like whatever. And then I looked, it's like, nah, this happened since Xbox One, and it can like lower your performance by like 20% or something.
That's
and like, don't quote me on the exact number, but it wasn't a minor performance loss. And in fact, a workaround was I guess is a thing on Xbox, you should follow people instead of being their friend, because that doesn't apparently have you download tons of data, constantly lowering your performance. By the way, this shows the inferior IO controllers on Xbox compared to the PS5. And you know, like I said, I thought this seemed, but the second I started reading about what's causing it, I went, never mind, I believe it, because
that makes sense.
They insist on running full Windows on a console, and Windows has tons of issues with this type of shit, like optimized, efficiently running things in the background or handling lots of data. Windows is terrible at that. So actually I can believe it, but I guess FYI, and it makes you wonder, like, how many of those benchmarks, like on Digital Foundry, are they accurate or not? Like, are they performing? Are some of the PS5 wins games affected by having a large friends list at a Digital Foundry account? Or is it the opposite? Do they not have any friends on that account and it actually isn't a fair test?
In practice, people get a lot lower performance.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if, like a lot of those tests are ran on a fresh console or something. Or
and there's someone, was it Eric on Twitter or M3RK Music writes that apparently he was sounding the alarm since Xbox One, that this was like a fundamental flaw in their operating system, and everyone called him a fanboy. So I don't know. I thought this was worth talking about. It's like, what the hell? We're like almost done with this generation and there's bugs this big. How many benchmarks out there where the PS5 wins is because of this? I don't know. Someone should test it. Jensen Wang, Nvidia isn't a bubble, says, should Microsoft just treat their Xbox division as a marketing towards Microsoft being a more consumer-friendly brand instead of setting profit targets, like set a loss target to account for the positive marketing impact the Xbox brand has or could have for Microsoft? I think it's just kind of too late and they got to get out. I mean, and do their best with Magnus as a bridge console to just get people onto Windows, and that's the actual goal. 5 years ago, I would have said yes.
Yeah, if Phil Spencer's tenure as head of Xbox went more the way it seemed like it was going to go at first, like that, I think that's what it would have pivoted towards. But I don't know. I feel like as time goes on, Phil Spencer comes off less and less like the consumer, like cool buddy pal guy, and more two-faced than anything. Like, yeah. So I think there was a soft effort to at least be able to pivot there at one point, but I think that's ship has sailed.
I agree. PS5 might have just been jailbroken by a bug in Star Wars Racer Revenge. Now this is pod racing.
Wow. That was my
Bulba, Danny.
Hey. Well,
I know what to say about this.
I guess I'm buying pod right now. I have not bought pod racing yet.
His name was Annie in the movie, but just so people know, me and my friend Brock often, when Dan joins a chat while we're gaming, go, "Si Bulba, hey Danny boy, Danny."
Yes.
Because we can't believe that character exists in Star Wars because of what it seems to resemble.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting character creation there, George.
There's been a few, though. Like Jar Jar Binks. There's, could make some suggestions there about what they drew from for that character.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe.
How does that
maybe
even
when
get
you,
through?
George, maybe when you write a movie, write it with your, like, film teacher or whoever you wrote it with next time. Because I think that's who we wrote it with, like, the first Star Wars movie. Maybe run it by more people next time.
Yes. All right. And then GTA 6 could reportedly slip. And this was a report from Jason Schreier, who I know has good sources, especially because Colin Moriarty vouches for him, as he knows he has good sources.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, according to Jason Schreier, GTA 6 is still not content complete. Now, to be fair, he says that there's still a chance it could be finished in 2026. But good Lord, it seems like a non-zero, and by non-zero, a reasonable chance that it gets delayed to 2027.
If that happens, I am starting to get a little worried about, like, if GTA 6 is in development hell. Like,
I agree.
Rockstar doesn't really mess up very often. Like, I think the last not great review game they put out was like Bully,
and some people
even
love
Bully like has its fair share of fans. So I hope this doesn't get pushed back, but if it does, again, I am genuinely starting to get a little worried about GTA 6.
I mean, I'm sure you can guess, Dan, but the report is they know it has to be perfect. Like, their stock price for the next 10 years depends on this being a perfect game. So they will wait as long as they need to. But it would be pathetic if there was not a new GTA on the PS5 generation, because they're dangerously close to that happening.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, so this was going to be a story, but I decided not to. I just threw a couple links here, but we have to say this really is going to be the year of the monitor, like a great year to get new monitors and stuff that I didn't know we would get this soon. Like, we're getting 1040 hertz monitors from Samsung. Samsung's also launching 6K glasses free 3D gaming. So it can just look at where your eyes are and make something 3D. My main concern would be what content still exists that would use 3D, but I don't know. That's still really cool. And in addition, it has a 6K 165 hertz mode in a 3K 330 hertz mode, I think. That's freaking cool. And like, I've seen these 1080p 4K dual mode things. I'm like, I'm sorry, 1080p is too low. I'm not going to go from 4K to 40, which is already hard to ever get to above 200 hertz anyways, to 1080p 480. Like, why would I do that? I would consider, because I saw some of these, a 5K, right? Going from 5K 165 to 1440p, double that, that'd be 330, in like some fast-paced games. I just wish they were all OLED or close
Yeah.
or an equivalent to mini LED or something, which not
Yeah.
all of them are.
Yeah. I mean, these are impressive monitors that I guess I think kind of deliver more performance than you're really are able to deliver more performance than you're able to get. So I guess from that perspective, they're pretty future proof. But we'll see if I guess this is like the first round. Like maybe these are a bit too early to the market. I mean, I guess I have one of those. Like I bought one of the first cheap 4K monitors out there, and it's still great as a side monitor.
Well, it really wasn't one of the first ones. I mean, I did. Mine was like an IPS 120 hertz. And yours was a better IPS. Actually, it had HDR that I could tell when it was turned on. It looked better than not being turned on. 144 hertz one. So yours was like kind of mid-gen. And
Yeah.
then now we're to things that are, I guess now we can go to hundreds of hertz or thousands depending on the resolution. Again, guys, this is so different from 2021 where everything was expensive. I mean, that's where I got my last 4K monitor. That was like $900 for 4K 120 IPS. And now I got a replacement because it broke. That's 4K 120 IPS for $200. So this is a year where if you're still on 1080p, you can get a
It might be time
IPS
to update.
4K 120 with FreeSync and G-Sync for $200. Or you can choose, I mean, basically it's a la carte. What do you want? You want 6K, 5K, 8K? Actually, they seem to be abandoning 8K for probably good reason. Do you want 300 hertz, 1,000 hertz? Do you want it to be a 3D monitor? And they're reasonably priced instead of being inflated like the last shortage. So do not sleep on the good monitor options this year. I mean, it's just incredible. I don't think I will probably get one because I have a 4K OLED 240. I can't imagine why I'd really want any more than that unless it was also OLED and something crazy. But I don't know. There really does need to be this call out here that not just the cool monitors being announced are awesome, but like the variety. It's not like a few, like 5 years ago or 4 years ago or something. It was 3 even, where like the first 4K 120 and 144 came out and they're like, it's $2,000. There's 384 dimming zones and you need to use 2 display ports if you want 144 hertz. Now it's like you use 1 display port or 1 HDMI. If it's OLED, it's like all 8 million display zones or like thousands in mini LED. They're so much better and they're a fraction of the price they used to be. So,
yeah.
All right. Let us continue here to the final reader mails. AI generated fish writes in and says, apparently the transition from Windows 10 to 11 is going horribly for Microsoft, with people choosing Windows 7 instead of going to 11. Oh, really? When do you think we'll see a laptop come out with an OS other than Windows? It's already happening. There's laptops that are offering Linux. I think HP is doing this, and it's happening.
More people are interested in trying Linux this day because Windows 11 sucks. And I there is a problem with Windows in general where I don't think, like, I'm not saying Windows hasn't gotten better since 7, but like, I don't know. It's been a much milder upgrade in like performance and UI and everything since 7 7 onward. And I thought 10 was at a good place, and they've really never offered a compelling reason to like make people want to move off of Windows 10, I don't think. And so they're just forcing it, and people are understandably pissed.
Yeah. I mean, what was the number one thing? I was talking to a contact who's a retailer source of mine, and the person said that there's a lot of people coming in now that are being screwed over by this forced obsolescence of 10, trying to get people to upgrade to 11. Our mom is one of those people. She has a Ryzen, I think it's 1000, I guess 2000, I think it was, but a Zen 1 APU, the first quad core Zen APUs. She has one, actually, and I believe it's like 7 or 8 years old. So it's like, yeah, it's quite old. But, you know, I sat down and, like you do for all boomers, I uninstalled all of their extra search bar things.
All their bloatware that they've installed.
All the bloatware they accidentally installed over the past year or two. And once I did that and uninstalled a few things that were taking up a lot of space.
Are you annoyed by the 18 search bars that you've accidentally installed, or are you just fine with that?
You're saying that's what
that happens with them. Yeah.
Seems to happen every few years. We have to uninstall 10 search bars in Chrome. But yeah, and like I freed up some space on their SSD. I just updated a few things and reinstalled a few things, and it is still fast. A Zen 1 quad core APU. It's still pretty snappy, actually, if you have a solid SSD in there. But she's like, I guess we gotta kind of have to upgrade. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can't update some things anymore. They're like breaking apps on Windows 10. I went through it a little bit with my Zen 3 system before I went to my current Zen 4X 3D setup with Windows 11. It's a complete joke. Anyways, this retail source I had said people are coming in and going, what do I do? And, they're like, well, most of them, yes, they just upgrade to a Windows 11 system because they don't want to learn how to use Linux. But I think this person said like a fourth of them are bought something to install Linux.
Yeah.
And that's more than I would have thought, like a fifth to a fourth of some of these people. And they're not all, hackers,
Yeah.
like a lot of them are novices, and that's more than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something going on here, AI generated fish, and a lot of OEMs are starting to offer Linux as an option, and Windows has got to, Microsoft, wake up, man. Like, wake up. AI Amiable Chief writes in and says, would you wager a crowbar we get Half-Life 3 before GTA 6? No.
I mean, no.
I think, and I would guess what this person is suggesting is that the new Steam frame or Steam machine is secretly going to get Half-Life 3 at launch. If that were true, I guess it's a small privately held company, but I feel like it would have leaked by now. Maybe it wouldn't have. They are a small company, but I have a weird feeling Half-Life 3 will eventually happen. I don't think it's next year, though.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I get there's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something that they want to announce with the Steam frame, but like, I don't know. It could also be Portal. I don't know if they would ever go back
Half-Life
to Portal
Alyx
again.
Part 2, because
or
they can't make it.
I don't know.
A third one.
Well, they haven't gone back to for a while is Left 4 Dead, right? Could there be a VR Left 4
I'd
Dead?
love a new Left 4 Dead.
Yeah. Just thoughts.
Just thoughts, bro. Mr. Tiger writes in, is DDR6 coming any sooner because of the money pouring into memory production? No. And it's funny, when I started writing this, I was like, yeah, but I don't think if it was pulled up, it would be for consumer stuff, and then it would probably just be for AI anyways. But then I slowly realized, well, guys, I know that Zen 8 desktop uses DDR6. I know that Zen 6 Medusa APUs, some of them will support LPDDR6X and LPDDR6. Okay. But that's already planned. So like, it doesn't really matter when DDR6 is ready. I know which products are planning to use DDR6, and that's set in stone. They're not going to change that now. Like, it takes years to design these things. So my answer is, for some, quickly designed AI stuff, I don't know, maybe, but it doesn't really matter because I know which products are getting it or not getting it already, and that's not going to change just because DDR6 is produced more. Like, they've already planned based on prior information. Manosa Akusis writes in and says, I just caught up with Broken Silicon 342, and I want to say congratulations for your marriage. I'm not married.
I don't know what that is, but congrats, I guess, Tom.
I
didn't know you eloped.
I have not proposed yet to my girlfriend over the past 2 weeks. I'm preparing to propose soon as well. Wish me luck. P.S. I will definitely get married before GTA 6 is out. You might, yeah. The real question is if I will have kids before that. Sounds like no.
That's true. Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. We can't tell you that, actually. But what we can say is, yeah, you might actually get married before GTA 6 is out, and that's funny. And I didn't say I was married, so I don't know where this is coming from.
I'm trying to think, did we insinuate that anywhere? I don't remember. But who knows?
I don't know. I don't know. Cull Addict writes in, though, and says, hi, Tom. Now that you unfortunately had to fire Dan after Die Shrink 168, how much of a reduced rate do you rehire him for Broken Silicon 344? The rate has not changed, actually. And in fact, it's slightly gone up recently, what I'm paying.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke that he cut it in half, but then that would probably end up being one angry person like, I can't believe.
Well, some people think I got married, and I don't even know how they got that, so we can't joke about that, apparently.
Yeah. Well, you went to Vegas and didn't tell me about it, Tom. That's how.
To be fair, I think like 3 of my friends did that, and they didn't do it with someone they just met. They did it because they didn't want to pay for a wedding, which is
that happens.
One of the quintessential millennial things to do lately.
Oh yeah, like one of my friends, even when he got married and like they cut down the size of the wedding just because it was of COVID and it was cheaper, and then they were like, "Oh,
Oh,
this is a lot cheaper though."
oh, oh no! We have to make it smaller. Sorry, we can't buy extra people dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I have not done that. Although, to be fair, a lot of my friends have, so that's not that uncommon with our generation. But no, and I also have not cut Dan's pay, despite joking about it. But if you want to see that joke, support us on Patreon and go watch the latest Die Shrink 168. And again, I want to plug again, it was very good. But otherwise, I think that's it. Let me start plugging the rest of the stuff. Please make sure that you are subscribed to Moore's Law is Dead on YouTube. Subscribing does help us get recommended more. Like the video, sharing the videos helps a ton as well. Comment down below for the algorithm or just to tell us what you think. I'm in the comments. I'm swimming in the ocean of comments, people. I do like talking to you and hearing what you think. It does inform my opinion as well and give me ideas on like what I should focus on in the future. Additionally, give us hype points, I guess. You know, that's a thing on mobile on YouTube. And then subscribe to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice and give us a review there as well so that other people find us outside of YouTube. Join the Patreon, plug it one more time. But otherwise, Dan, any final words?
Don't think so.
All right. Well, I'm exhausted. I can tell you're exhausted. So we're going to go. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, everybody, and have a good week.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family and on social media and websites like Reddit. And give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, CJS, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Toka, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferreira, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Press AI Blocks, Chris Rich, Al Buma, Heaven Dingle, Shredburb, Sammy Malas, Chris Thenos, Curry King 3, The Boss, Haas, Tommy, Jonathan, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Ian Clifford, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Amiable Chief, Winwang, I Should, Zoot Suit Taylor, Mads, Patty Cakes, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Salty Internet Pirate, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Winstar, Little Germany, James I. Raider, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Harlan, Matthew Cassels, Brian Wright, Slushpod, Jansen Angima, John Swin, The Forbidden Juice, RV Racer, Bing Bong 3, Solarized 80, Elbergun, Kikum, Dan M, 1988, Sprutnik, Brian P, Hudat 42, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, Omega Doge, Hugo, Ander Kiwi, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Smash Axley, Nick Zuzmania, Karim Al Masri, AI Soldier 789, Rye Hill, Chi Bowles, Bespoke exclamation point, Kevin Kuntz, Manolis Ragkusis, Fred Berger, Jonathan Harris, Kellen, Raichel, Kainush Kagani, Zabir Ahmed, Johnny Trans, Josh, RKEO, RK0, Zephyrin, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.